farmed with my father from 76 until 1982, when my brother Bruce came back and joined the operation. My father left it. During that time period in 1978, we introduced large round bales to our farming operations. This is very common that you see out there today, these large hay bales. Up to that time, everything was a small square bale that had to be handled. Everything was handled by hand. So with the large round bales, which you're going up to 1,200 pounds. So it's a major change to introduce such a large package into a normal farming operation. The advantage, of course, is that now you're handling everything mechanically with loaders and so forth, and you can do everything so much faster. So the quality of the product you can store is much better. It was an interesting time of change. People were not used to the big hay bales out there. There was no really support structures for it. You'd had to develop your own wagons, your feeders, and methods of feeding them. I can remember one day we were baling here in the corner, and I was going around the field, and people would come and stop and watch the baler going around the field, and they'd follow you down around the corner, and then they'd turn around and come back and follow the baler around again. And then the next day I remember looking out the field, and people had actually stopped and were walking out in the field to actually examine the bales and give them a push. This is how unique they were at that time. Probably the biggest compliment I ever got at the time for going into that system was that one farmer told me, well, they may work on your farm, but I don't think you'll ever see them on mine. Of course, today you see them on every farm there is. But I have to give my father full credit for working with us and adopting that. He was in full support of the whole system. In 1982, as I said, my brother Bruce came back into the farming operation. In 86, we made another major change in our operation. We went from conventional tillage planting to no-till. This is where you plant 1 year's crop on the residue of the previous crop without doing any tillage whatsoever. So now you're removing the process of plowing, cultivation, disking, and the most important one to us immediately was the picking stone, because you aren't working the stones up anymore. So you can immediately see the time advantage. You can see the cost advantage too without all the tillage operations and the equipment needed there. The advantage to the soil is immediately the most visual one is where erosion is ceased, because now with the cover crop with the residue on there, you're protecting the soils from wind, water, and most importantly on the hills here in Northumberland County, you're protecting them from the physical erosion of tillage, where you're dragging the topsoil down into the valley. The other thing that you don't see so much and as quickly until you go and look at is the natural biological reactions and interactions that take within the soil are now maintained instead of disrupting them and destroying them with tillage. Now they remain intact. The most visible one right off the bat would be the great multiplication of earthworms. So you add in things like crop rotation, cover crops, and so forth. You'll see a major improvement in your soils. There's a field out here in the corner that's Ryan, who bought this farm. He's a big no-tiller too. So there's a field out here in the corner that he's also maintained that has not been tilled since 1983. So you're approaching 40 years of continuous cropping on that field with no tillage. My brother and I maintained the dairy farming operation until April 1st, 2015, when we retired and sold the farm to the Princes. Growing up in this community, it was much more community focused. Everything was centered around the church and the school. As time progressed, the school was closed. Everybody was bused to larger schools, so that focus totally changed. Over the years, all the extension services were removed from agriculture and changed over to the industry. And there was also an amalgamation politically of the township and the town. So now everything is much more focused towards the town. People who move into the country are much more mobile and really not the focus that you see in the community that you saw when we were growing up. So you lose that camaraderie, that support that normally was there. A lot fewer farmers out here today. A lot of the farms are rented out, so there's a lot of fewer individuals. So in the farming industry now, you have to maintain that social contact through the usual social things that the people in town do. So you find a lot more pressures from urban society on the farming practices that you have now that you didn't then, because they're moving out, want to live out in the countryside, and they really aren't as aware or knowledgeable of the farming practices as normally when everybody grew up out there. Looking back, you have to be very grateful that you grew up in a community where the people looked out for you, and you had great friends and neighbors, and still associations with many of them today. It gave you a great background to base your life on, and that's the Brighton I remember.